I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. Doesn't matter if my beard is gray. Just listen, I have something to say. I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. And this old goat has something to say. So just keep learning from Grandpa Dennis's turning. These are bur oak wedges arranged in a circle, enough for 3 layers. This is the blank that came out of the pressure pot. The colors on here are just gorgeous. There's some reds in there, bit of yellow and orange. Wow. I found the centers, and on the other side, I've got a center as well. I'm going to put that between centers on my lathe, and then I'll true up the bottom of the blank to accept a waste block that I'm going to epoxy onto the bottom of this piece. My practice is to have the faceplate perfectly flat, the waste block, and have the piece perfectly flat, because I want the majority of the entire waste block to have enough resin glue on it so that it sits flat on the piece and gives me the most strength. A lot of people will use hot glue and put hot glue over this, and I think that's a wonderful process. However, I've found that the hot glue has failed on me a couple of times when it's on the wooden waste block and epoxy. When it's on a wooden waste block and a wood piece, it sticks very well and holds well. However, when I've got an epoxy base here, I like to use a 5-minute epoxy glue on this to hold it on. But it does mean I have to wait overnight for that to fully cure. And that just gives me a little bit more security and a little more strength, especially when I've got a piece that's 15 to 25 pounds and I'm going to be coring it. There's an awful lot of tension on the piece in the coring process. That's when I like to use the epoxy. I'm going to leave this between centers with enough pressure from my tailstock to keep the pressure on that so that when it is curing, it's going to be seated very strongly. That'll stay like this overnight. I've now started the coring system. I've got a steady rest holding my major blank in place, and I'm trying to get 3 small cores out of the one blank. This is the first one. This is a slow process, but it allows me to make 3 or 4 bowls out of the one blank. If I didn't do this coring, I would have to turn all of the inside of the entire blank, and that would result in huge mountains of shavings. This coring process puts a very large amount of stress and tension on the blank. I have to have it held on to the lathe very securely. I have an extension on my tailstock that's brought up to hold the core in place as I'm cutting it. As you see, that prevented the core from flying out of the lathe, damaging itself or the blank or me. When I had all of my face plates made, I did two things. I had the holes for the screws countersunk from this side. That's because when the screws go into the wood, it pulls out some of the fibers. And if it were flat, it would then start rocking on the faceplate. The other thing I had them do was they milled out the whole center of the faceplate so that just the rim was proud. When it comes time to putting a faceplate on wood, that's when you want the surface area to be just on the outside. And that gives you a better seating of the faceplate. But when it comes to gluing it, you want that as flat as you can so you have more surface area holding it. I now have all of the blanks secured onto a waste block. This is a scrap piece of wood attached to my faceplate with screws, and it's glued with 5-minute epoxy onto the bowl blank. That process helps me save the bottom of the bowl blank. Because I cored out 4 blanks out of that one piece, each blank is less than an inch thick. So the bottom of this piece is less than an inch thick. And I don't want to waste any of that wood on a tendon to grip it. So the waste block will be cut straight off and the bottom of the bowl is already made. Now I'll be shaping this bowl a little bit, cleaning it up. The shape is pretty much going to be the same on all of them. The issue I'm having is that this is such gorgeous color and so nice. I don't want to shape all of that away. It's a little bit out of round, so I'll have to true it up a bit. But I want to keep this piece all the way around flat and then shaped downward from there. I will do the same on the other 2 blanks so that they both match up in terms of shape. I thought the piece was a little loose, so I ended up tightening it. I hadn't tightened it enough on here. I guess the older you get, the more forgetful you get. Time to lock this in place. That wouldn't have been disastrous because I would have been putting pressure on this, which would slow this slightly, and it's going against the turn of the lathe, so it would have tightened itself. But it's still not the right thing to do. I'm just trying to refine the shape on this. At first, I want an OG in here, a slight dip, and a corresponding slight dip down at the foot. That allows the bowl to have the appearance of floating a little bit more. At first, I cut a square line down here, a real sharp line to differentiate this part from the rest of the bowl. However, in nature there's really no straight square lines, and that's not a really good feature for my liking. That's why all of the pieces of oak in here are all jagged, and there's very few straight lines and squares in here. So to have a straight line in here, I don't think would be a good move. So I'm trying to soften that significantly and yet still keeping that gentle OG curve in here. One of the design principles I tend to follow is called the golden mean rule. This is 1/3 of the entire depth of the bowl, and this foot should be 1/3 of the diameter of the bowl. So I'll just measure that out and see where we're at. This looks like a good diameter for the foot. This part, I don't know if you can see that, but all of this waste block will be cut out. I will cut the foot, the waste block off right along that pencil, and that'll give me a nice foot. There's a little bit of OG curve in here, and there's a little bit in here. And this is rounded out nicely. Time to sand this part, the outside, and then I'll just curve out the inside to match the flow of the outside. Just a note, the pieces of wood that are encased in the resin are oak, and they're end grain, exposed end grain, all of it. Resin is very hard, so it's a bit difficult to sand. Oak is very, very hard. This is like a stone, and end grain is even doubly hard. So this is going to take a while, and it'll need some sharp sandpaper. But I think it's going to come out nice. I just finished the 1200 grit on here, and it's as smooth as glass. Now I'm going to put some of this white diamond compound from the Beal system onto a buffing wheel and buff that as well. That compound is supposed to be around 15 to 1800 grit, the equivalent of that. If anyone knows that for sure, send a comment in the comment section. I'd be very interested to find out. That's the best I could find online, but maybe somebody else has more accurate information. That compound has a wax base to it, so I'm taking it off with the methyl hydrate to ensure that the finish that I put on will stick properly. I had to use a variety of tools to clean out the inside of this bowl, and I used my calipers frequently to check on the wall thickness to ensure that it was even. The sanding was started at about 60 grit and went all the way up to 1500. Then I did some buffing as I did on the outside. I've got my finish here. It's 1/3 polyurethane, 1/3 pure tongue oil, and 1/3 boiled linseed oil. I put it on, saturate it as much as I can, wipe it off, let it set overnight, and repeat the process 2 or 3 times. This first coat has about 10 to 20% of solvent mixed in to give it a little bit more soaking in power. This is the finished bowl that I parted off the faceplate and the waste block and then polished it out a few more times, a few more coats of finish on it, and that's my finished product. The other 2 bowls that were cored out of this are very similar. The process is the same with the waste block and the hollowing out and the finishing. And that's the 3rd bowl that comes out of here. These are the finished nesting bowls, a nice set of 3. It's very difficult to do this wood because it's, number 1, bur oak, very, very hard, and number 2, it's all end grain. So this was as tough and difficult as turning stone. The finish on these bowls is amazing. This pumpkin orange ends up looking exactly like fire. It's been a fun project. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell, and that'll give you advance notice of my upcoming videos. As well, hit the like button. A comment would be really appreciated. I'm also doing something a little new. Every once in a while, I'm going to do a cooking video and doing a few of my favorite recipes. Stay tuned for that. I think you'll enjoy them. Until the next time, keep turning. Grandpa Dennis is turning. I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. Doesn't matter if my beard is gray. Just listen, I have something to say. I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. And this old goat has something to say. So just keep learning from Grandpa Dennis's turning.